So yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming, and thanks for invite, Thomas. It's a nice opportunity to meet with more people face to face, not only on Facebook and not only just talking online or via email. Um, the 4 hour is almost going to be 4 hours, right? The workshop that I wanted to do is I wanted to break it down to a quick presentation where I'm gonna talk about illustrating for film and video games. And I'll after that we'll take a break, a quick break, and I'll do a demo. I will show you a quick demo of environment illustration, and I'll talk about how this could be an environment illustration both for film or for games or pretty much anything else. And I'll talk differences as well. And after that, we'll just make a QA. So you just feel free to ask any question you want. Also, feel free to ask any questions during the presentation and the demo as well. I'm just gonna pause, maybe like during thought process, maybe I'll just continue talking, and then after I finish my thought, I'll answer that question. So first thing, let's get it here. Oops. I wanted to humble brag about myself, just to introduce myself a little bit. I hate doing that. Most of the people already know who I am, and I'm humble bragging right now too. This is basically a list of clients that I worked with. I just wanted to show you where my experience is coming from and why I feel to be in the right place to even talk about illustrating for films and video games. On the right side of the screen, you can see all the film studios I worked with, and there are pretty much every single biggest studio on the list. On the left side, you can see all the other studios, so video games, illustration companies such as Applebot or Wizard of the Coast, some publishing companies, animation, and all that. I started in 2004. My professional work started then. Before I even thought about being a concept artist, I was a janitor, and I was cleaning hospitals where my mom used to work, and also I was studying to be an electrician. So coming pretty humble background. Um, and I had zero direct relation to or idea to become an illustrator or an artist in entertainment industry. I didn't even know what entertainment industry is before I got my first job. I was passionate about drawing, so I would be drawing on a napkin or back of a book or something anytime I had a chance, and but I never saw an opportunity to make money out of it or make it as my lifestyle. The thing that kind of kickstarted everything was the little short animation from a friend of mine, Tomek Baginski, that appeared in 2003, and it was the Cathedral. It's an animated film that got nominated for Academy Award in 2003, and it just blew up. It was everywhere on the TV, and I was like, "Holy shit! I want to do something like that one day, or be part of it at least." And I started looking into it. Uh, Back in the days, there was no Facebook, or it wasn't so popular. I don't think there was even Facebook, or it was just becoming popular, so no one knew about it. Uh, the only way to learn was either go to art schools, like a typical traditional art schools, or art academies, and there was no school that would be teaching you exactly what to do to become an entertainment concept artist. The only one that I knew about was the art center, um, but that was on the other side of the globe. I'm from Poland, by the way, so it's 6,000 miles or 7,000 miles away. I don't think I could, first of all, afford it, but second of all, just even, get there. Um, so I started working, I started looking into forums and picked up Photoshop and quite quickly got my first illustration jobs. I was just very passionate, so right after school, coming back around 7, sitting till 4 a.m. every day. So almost, even though uh, I wanted to still be an electrician, um, I was thinking about art more and more seriously. And when I started to get job offers, then uh, I figured out, you know what, I might just quit school and do that instead. Um, and again, I had no chance to attend any academic avenues back then. So the only route that I was left with was just, be teaching myself and learning from others on forums. Then in 2004, I got offer to move to from my hometown, which is in the north coast of Poland. It's called Gdynia. From there, I moved to Warsaw, the capital of Poland, and started working with People Can Fly. That's the company that released Painkiller. Then I worked on the expansion Painkiller Battle Out of Hell. That was my first big project. And I also worked on this one game that got canceled afterwards, and quite a lot of work that I did for that game was down the drain. Um, and I've been there for about 5, 6 months, but I wanted to change my environment a little bit, and I started applying to other studios. And the first studio that came back with a serious offer was Crytek, and I was right after they released. It was soon after they released Far Cry, and they liked my work, and we started talking. And eventually, in May 2005, I moved to Coburg, Bavaria, and started working on Crisis, and the other game that got canceled again. So I was in a streak of canceled games. Like, what the fuck am I gonna show? I have no work to show. Anyways, so and from there it kind of kick-started. I've spent another 4 years at Crytek, worked on Crisis 2, also helped on the Warface, which is the free online game that they released, and was responsible for sort of first look development of Rise. It was totally different game back then, but kind of helped in that, and it went from there to something totally different. And then in 2010, I moved to California. I got an offer from Naughty Dog, and uh, that's where my journey in the US started. And back in 2012, before the Last of Us was released, for family reasons and all the other reasons that were at place at the very time, I had to go back to Poland, and I was planning to stay there for a little longer, but everything kind of sorted itself out. And the year after, I came back right for the Last of Us release. And during the time when I was in Poland, I started working in films and started freelancing for films. I got contacted by John Gata, which was the visual effects supervisor on Matrix, and we worked together for almost 18 months on Jupiter Ascending. Um, and I was working with great friend of mine, Mark Alcoin, on that project for a long time. And there's a few other artists that I could mention that were involved, such as Reed Southern and George Hall. All of them were in production in the actual studio. Me and Mark were probably one of the only guys that were freelancing for that film. I also worked during that time on Seventh Son. And the funny thing, the release date of X-Men, the other movie I worked on, that was the last movie I worked on. So it's the opposite direction. So that's the first one I worked on, and then it kind of went this direction. And the first movie I worked on gonna be released the last, and it's The Gods of Egypt. And the last movie I worked on, X-Men, was already released. So that's how Hollywood works. Gonna pull things around, and um, so there is quite a journey that was happening over the last 10 years, and it all came down to me being a person that is a workaholic, pretty much. I worked I pretty much averaged about 15 to 16 hours a day easily during uh, maybe not during the period of the 10 years, but 5, 6 years out of that time was me being an absolute junkie in terms of sitting in front of a computer and working. And that's one of the topics that I will want to talk about today. Let me just check if the audio is recorded. It is. Okay, cool. So that's about me. I don't want to talk about me anymore. I want to talk about what it is to be an illustrator. And there's three topics that I want to talk about, and they will I'll be bouncing around those topics a little bit because the 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 whole concept artist in entertainment industries is a large topic, and we could spend 4 hours talking about it with QA. But there's three major ideas that I feel that has to be discussed when thinking about being a concept artist in the entertainment industry. And the first one I want to talk about is, what does it mean if no one is calling you? Obviously, when you work as a concept artist or anyone, you want to get those calls, right? You want to get job offers. That's the ultimate goal. Apart from being passionate about your work and passionate about creating content and creating amazing artworks and sharing them with everyone, um, you're not gonna make a living just by doing that. You want to have commercial work, unless you're Danny Luvisi and you create your own book and then get in debt and spend a lot of money and take a huge risk, and then it can happen. You can be successful that way, but that also means you have to work double the amount of time to even get there. Yeah, yeah. I personally I want to develop my own IPs, and I have some ideas how to do it, but just knowing how much work Danny puts into his stuff, it's just I'm not sure if I could do that. Not with like family and whatnot. It's just like my wife would probably kill me at that point. um, so what does it mean if no one is calling you? Uh, it means either the quality of your work is bad, or the quality of your work is not good enough, or quality of your work is, and we can kind of go on and on and on and on. And then the last one, I think this one here should be in the like the smallest letter, because that's the least important part. Are you even online? Which means if you're channeling your work in the proper way. Um, it comes down to quality of your work. If you're not getting job offers, that's your fault. It's no one else's fault. That means your work is not interesting to anyone, and no one is willing to pay you money for what you're doing. And throughout, from my experience, the bar at which you start getting work, or at which you can apply for work and find something to channel and get money, is pretty low, I would say, or it was pretty low back in 2004. It's not anymore. It's just considering how this industry blew up and how many more illustrators are available for hire today compared to what it was 10 years ago, or even like 20 years ago. It was even totally different too, because there was maybe 10 or 15 or 20 well-known illustrators, and that's it. And the rest of it was more like a local thing. 10 years ago, when not film, the games industry started booming, and there was more and more bigger AAA studios coming afloat. um, that's when it started booming. That's where most people started be interested with concept art in general. And right now it's just saturated, like really saturated. If you ever go on DeviantArt or CG Hub, that used to be CG Hub, or it doesn't exist anymore. Well, let's say DeviantArt, because it still exists, and it's probably the largest forum out there to channel your work. You'll see that there's millions of artists. Not all of them will be working in the industry. To be frankly honest with you, only 5% of them will ever have like a proper job. 95% of artists usually just fell off the train and never get anywhere. There's a simple reason for that is you gotta be in mindset of being passionate about your work and being and thinking about art as something that you want to do as your lifestyle. If you're not doing it as your lifestyle, what you're getting is just another work that you're working for, another thing that you're doing. Um, Being passionate means putting most of your time into it. So every hour is counted as your work. So that's what I'm saying. It's if you think you're working hard, think again. Um, I've the class I'm running right now, we had that in the very beginning. We had that little talk in the very beginning, and I asked, "Where's the homework?" I asked my student, "Where's the homework?" And said, and some say like, I was doing that freelance, and I have something else to do, and like, there's always some excuse. And uh, among all the artists, and there's so many of them right now, 95% will make excuses, and 5% will say, I either fucked up and I have to get better, or they will actually do it. And those guys will get jobs. Um, so you have to work real hard. It has to be more than 8 hours a day. 8 hours a day will get you there. You'll be an artist. You'll make money out of it. But uh, I'll talk about what does it mean to be an artist that gets work, and what it is to be an artist that is getting work. Um, Next thing is if you think you're on top, there's only way down. There's only a way to go from there, um, and that's related to your ego. Um, some people have their ego in check, and a lot of artists out there, especially those who think about an art as a novelty of working in a traditional way and going to galleries and whatnot. Not all of them, but most of them are. I don't know what they're thinking. Their ego is really high, and for no reason, because their work absolutely sucks. Um, so never, even if you're getting film jobs and you're about to work for Ridley Scott or someone, and you're about to be one of the best in the industry, you're not gonna get to that position if you think you're already on top. You're never already on top, and you'll never be. And you might be on top for a couple of months, and then software changes, and someone is creating better art. So it's always striving for being on top. It's almost like being a Prometheus. You try and get that boulder on top of the mountain, but it falls down all the way right before the top. That's when the new software comes out, and you realize, fuck, I have to learn more. Um, so that's what I would recommend. Just get your ego checked, and actually, uh, in this industry is even though there's so many artists out there, if you want to be successful, you'll be in this in this 5% of community that cares about the community and cares about becoming better and better. Uh, that community is pretty small, and if your ego is large, you'll fall out from there. No matter how good you are, uh, you're not gonna be liked, and it's less likely you're gonna get work too. For me, I had ego issues when I was at Crytek, and pretty big ones. And when Redemption, the project I was working on, the game that I was working on, fell apart, that got me to think about myself a little bit more. And at that moment, I started thinking about improving, and this is when I started doing side projects and started learning a lot, and started sitting till 3 4 a.m. every day to learn more and become better at the craft. because I realized that maybe it wasn't directly my fault that the project fell apart. There was some other issues that I can't really talk about because it's still under NDA, obviously. Uh, but coming back to this saying that if you're thinking like you're working hard and you're not, and if you think that you're on the top, you're really not on the top. I kind of started rethinking all that and figured out I have to work on myself a little more, and I started doing that. And the last thing is what Danny Levisi's dad told him once. I think once that's when you were working on your IP, right, on the kill book. Is every day you're slacking off on your goals, someone else that wants it more than you is catching up. That means that's another way to say you should work your ass off if you want to be in this industry. It's only for people that really want to do something real bad, and with art. Like if you want to become really good, that's your industry. If you're passionate about creating art in any form, that's the industry for you. If you're not passionate about it, there's so many better jobs because the spectrum of payments and how much you can earn in this industry goes from McDonald's to lawyer. And if you're average or shitty, you're gonna be on that lower spectrum of pay. To be the lawyer spectrum of pay, you gotta work a lot. But you can get there. It's just it's a matter of commitment, and you have to commit like really bad to you. Like you want to. That's the most thing that's one of the things that you want in your life the most. If it's not that thing, then I recommend you stop here. Don't waste money on education. Don't waste time and switch jobs because you're never gonna get there. You're gonna be one of those guys who just sit there and is an average guy and scramble for work. Um, and coming back to that, I'm putting it as 98%. I just pulled the DeviantArt page, random page. It blurred out the names. I don't want to point out which artwork is bad or not. I just mentioned it. This is 98% of art community. It's just average artwork that you can see everywhere. And this is good. It's a vast majority of community, and there's so much artwork being put out there that no one will notice. If someone is starting a project, if a studio is starting a project, or if a writer wants a cover for his book, or if a production designer needs an artist for his new film, and whatnot, they will not look at any of that here. They will see it as a noise. They're not interested in that. They want to look at this stuff. That's Jamie Jones' painting, by the way. And people like Jamie Jones and this kind of quality of work is what it means to be the guy who is actually in a position where you can choose to work on the project or not, because you're getting so many offers, or you're getting constantly some offers that you can pick and choose which one you wanna work on, and you can be more selective, and you can decide. I don't like the idea behind this project, even though it's a big studio. I'm not gonna work on that because there's the other studio that's coming in with something that is resonating with what I feel about my art, and I feel like it's gonna be better. And also it's raising your salary in the end too, because if you have 10 projects to choose from, or 5 projects, or even 2 projects to choose from, you can always say, hey, I have one offer that no uh, that is offering me the X amount of money, and if you can offer me more, I'll be down for that. If 2 projects are both really interesting, you have more options. But that happens is when you're in this 5 or 2% of artists that are really good, and they already made their 20,000 hours of hard labor in this field. It's not only labor in terms of working for clients, but also working on personal projects, or just painting and learning. Um, If you're on the other side of this spectrum, if you're the majority of the art community, then it means you're looking for a job, then it means you're applying and you're waiting for emails for studios to respond, and you're actually you're in a competition. There's hundreds of you that want the same thing, and until you get to this threshold where you don't have to look for a job anymore, that the job is looking for you, you're gonna be in this position where you'll have to accept any work that pays your bills. And for peace of mind and living a life that you're enjoying art, not just treating it as a labor that you have to do for from 9 to 6 or 9 to 5. Um, you know, quit the industry if you're not willing to be in that 5% mark, because it means it's not for you. It means there's something else for you that you're more passionate about, and you want to follow even more. I feel that every one of us has their own hobby that likes the most and can become the most passionate about that specific hobby. And and if it's not art in the first place, and then it's not the right field for you, because I'm telling you, you're not gonna make money out of it. You can barely make a living if you're not good. You will just make the average salary and scramble. And I know quite a few examples of people that actually changed the industry because of the passion. A friend of mine from Crytek used to know a guy um, who used to be in the medical field. He was operating on hearts. So he was like I don't know how we call it, surgeon, the heart surgeon, however you want to call it. There's a name for it. I'm not English speaking person. Like I'm not. My English is not my primary language, so I don't remember some words. Anyways, he used to be that, and he was earning a ton of money, but that wasn't his thing, and he switched and he started doing art, and he was so passionate about it that within a couple of years he started working in films. Uh, it's German films mostly, but still, that got him there. It's just the passion, how passionate and how much time he spent to become uh, an artist. An example of passionate artist and guy, a good friend of mine, who started from absolutely horrible horseshit art to one of the most talented artists out there, just purely by putting enough hours into it and making it as a priority in life. And that guy is Mark Ocon. We worked together on we worked together on The Last of Us. We worked together on Jupiter Ascending. We also worked together on a few other films. And I think if you look into a success story, that would be one of them. There is many of them, but also if you ask him how much time he spent, you'll realize that it's probably double the time that you spend on what you're doing with art. So you can get there, but it means a lot of work, and you have to commit real hard um, to be in that position. So again, it's either you're working hard or it's not for you. And the little point, the point D, is channeling your work to the right direction. Um, let's assume your art is good enough to get you a job, or maybe you're awesome, but you're not posting it anywhere. It's highly unlikely. If you're really good, then probably someone already knows about it. Um, but just to get out there, first thing is just Facebook, Twitter, any social media. Just post your work and be proud of it. And if someone thinks your work sucks, just own it, and that means you have to improve, no matter how good you are. There's also online art communities, which are probably better for getting a critique. Um, I barely ever get a proper critique on social media, and I don't think anyone is getting any. It's more about show off and showing what you can do or what you have to offer, and just getting the word out. And so online art communities are better for this because you can ask specifically for critique, and probably you're not gonna get any because people are lazy. But you can make friends through those communities, and I've noticed that these days it's better to actually get a proper critique from friends that are interested in the same thing. Um, but then again, make sure those people are like-minded and they are pushing the limits of their own skills as well, because if they settle for average, then you're not gonna get anything out of it. Am I losing a battery? All right, hold on. I'll pause and. All right, a little technical issue. Uh, anyway, so yeah, channel through social media, channel through online communities, and as I was mentioning, DeviantArts, CG Society, or ArtStation. There's a few more. And then there's also workshops and seminars, and I highly recommend you to go to those. And some of them are paid, and it's maybe harder to get when you have to travel to a different town, and also you have to pay a fee to get in, and a hotel and flight and all that. That might be costly. But if something going on near you, just go and do it. Simple reason is it's different to meet people on Facebook and talk on Facebook, and it's a totally different story when you meet them in person. And it comes to all to meeting all other artists or instructors or teachers and all that. Um, so this is a great example why you should be here. It's because not only you can interact with the instructor directly and ask any question you want, and granted, instructor will answer this question. Because if you have your favorite artist, for example, on Facebook, and you follow him, and maybe you're in a friends group, and you're gonna ask the question, that person might not answer it. There's a few reasons. He might be an asshole, and he doesn't want to answer any questions because he's not community oriented. He just want to have people follow his work and click likes or get his artwork out, and he doesn't care about anyone else. That might be one of the reasons. Or the other reason could be he just literally just don't have time because maybe there's hundreds of other artists that want to ask the same question. Or maybe he just answered to 10 people exactly the question you're asking, and he's like, I should make a QA page. Um, or maybe he just doesn't have time. Maybe he just want to come on Facebook and check what's his friends are doing, and not really want to interact with the community at this point. And especially the better the artists are, and the more popular they are, it's getting harder and harder for them to even interact with community properly. I personally, I don't know how Danny or Anthony Jones are doing this. This is insane because, like, for me, I don't have as many followers as you guys, um, and the community that's around my art is not as large. It's still overwhelming for me, considering work, family, and eating and sleeping, and you maybe find 10, 15 minutes to channel something through Facebook and talk to friends, ask questions with them, or make plans, and then you have hundreds of messages and people writing you email, and it's just becoming like a second work. Like, I almost feel like you should hire an assistant and have someone answering that. So it's different because right now I'm like, for instance, I'm here and I'm available for you. That's the time I committed for this workshop and for your questions and for everything. So when you go to workshops and seminars and classes and all that, you can get answers right away. You don't have to wait. You don't have to think like, oh, does this guy hate me and doesn't want to talk with me or whatnot. You can always ask those questions, and you get to you're usually gonna get the direct answer. Also, you get to meet people. You get to when someone is talking to you directly or explaining his thought process about things. It's a little different when it's a video. When I'll be doing a video QA, because you can be more hands-on to what's going on, and you get one question answered, and then you can follow it with another question, or get kind of more information, and also the energy is different when there's a personal interaction. There's different energy, um, and for instructors like me, it's also easier to connect with the community because then I can see your faces, and talking to actual face instead of text is kind of more easier and more pleasant than just texting someone and seeing letters. More sort of natural to what humans are supposed to do, interact with each other instead of just be online. Um, Another topic that I wanted to talk about is I pixel painted everything from scratch, which is kind of elaborate like it's elaborating from this notion that was very popular back in 2000, anywhere from 2003 to till 2010, and it's still kind of popular within some parts of the community. Is that there's some novelty about this whole concept art and illustration. There's none. Uh, we are not. No one cares. Uh, we're not. We're not artists per se. We're doing it not only well for passion's sake. We are artists, and for passion's sake, for doing your own thing. When you want to channel your own energy to art, then you can do whatever you want, and you can have that novelty and romance of being the guy who works in a traditional way and only uses brushes to paint things, and the only tool to use is Photoshop and nothing else. And you can do that, sure. In professional world, no one gives a shit. And if they see you give a shit, then they will ignore you. Um, and if it's your client and you're forcing him to your thinking, he'll just say, "Well, I'm gonna get some other guy because I don't want to work with you." Um, no one cares, because first of all, when you work in an illustration and when you work in concept art and when you're a professional designer or illustrator, there's three things you have to do: deliver on time, deliver what is expected of you, and that means also you're setting up expectations, and also the mindset that Photoshop, 3D programs, pencils, photography, everything is just a tool to get your job done. Um, the pixel painted from everything from scratch comes from this term. I'm sure you've seen quite a few people posting something like this on, like, just making fun of everyone around. Is when back in 2004 there was this forum called Sijin, and everyone was doing speed paintings, and like everyone who was doing speed paintings, most of the guys were just painting. They were using Photoshop and brushes to create those quick illustrations that were anywhere from 30 minutes to like 5 hours. By the way, 5 hours was still considered speed paintings. Right now, 5 hours is illustration already almost, and now everyone is just like, oh, I did it in 5 minutes without using anything. I just used the round brush and on mouse. You know what? No one cares about that either. How much time you spent. The only person who cares about it is the person who's gonna hire you, because that's your expectations you're setting for yourself. Um, so, anyways, everyone was painting, and then there were a few guys that were using photos, and one of those guys was Craig Mullins, which was the icon, and still is the icon of art. And he was pretty open about using photos and reusing his own paintings, and I don't think anyone believed him. Everyone had a novelty. Like, there was a lot of people that had this novelty, like, oh, he's still painting it. He's just so good. He's still painting it. No, he was using photos. Everyone is. Um, But this kind of thinking where everything has to be painted kind of prevailed through like up until 2010. It kind of started easing off, and it was just like, oh, you used photo, it's not really an artwork, you're cheating, and just kind of making excuses and making you feel bad because you just wanted to be faster about something. Um, it's just no one cares, especially if it's a professional environment and you have to deliver on time and you're working in on the commercial work for the industry. No one cares what are you doing with the artwork, as long as it's delivering the same quality that they expect from you, that they see from your portfolio. It's fine if you use Photoshop, Photos, 3D, ZBrush. No one really cares. Setting up expectations. That's something that I wanted to talk about too, because um, if you're posting on Facebook, let's say you're posting on Facebook your sketch, and you spent on it 4 hours. You did some 3D, some photos, and then you spent 2 hours just cleverly covering it up, just making it look like it's painted. And then you post like 20 minutes, just brushes. Cool. I don't know what you're trying to prove. That you're fast. That's awesome. None of the other artists will care. The only person who cares is your client. That is like, oh fuck yeah, this guy did it in 20 minutes, so I can get like 20 minutes, 3 artworks per hour, 24 artworks like that a day. Uh, you're just putting it on yourself. That's like if you're lying and you're saying I did this and that, you're putting yourself in trouble because yeah, you're just setting expectations. And it same goes to when you get to work on a project that you're really passionate about, and guess what? After 2-3 weeks of working on the project that you're really passionate about, you hit the wall and you don't want to work on it anymore. You eventually get over it, and then you get the passions back. But it's both for your personal work and commercial work. Eventually, you're gonna hit the wall, and you're gonna be less productive. And if you start really passionate, and let's say you get paid for 8 hours of work, right? And you work 15 hours and deliver something for next 3 days. You work 15 hours because this is the best shit you wanna, the best fucking project ever. I wanna be in it, and it's the dream come true. And you work 15 hours a day. First 3 days, and your director, art director, producer, or whoever is your client is like, holy shit, I'm getting a really good quality of work, and in a short time, this is gonna be a great run. And then your productivity just goes all the way down because all of a sudden you're not working that 15 hours because you know you can't keep up with that speed, and you're back to 8 hours, and you're getting kind of tired of it too, so you're actually back even lower to like 6 hours. And then all of a sudden it's like 1/3 of the work that you used to deliver. That's usually a good recipe to get fired. So remember, setting up expectations is very important too. So if you're saying I did it in 20 minutes, then you better do it in 20 minutes if someone asks you for it, because you're gonna get fired otherwise. Um, and it directly comes back, pixel painted from everything. No one cares. The only person that should care about it is you, and no one else, because no one else really does. And I'm showing you here some few examples of work and how the art was changing. And pixel painted everything from scratch. I would say Ryan Church has done that in his paintings back in what it was 2001, 2002. I don't remember when Star Wars the reboot of Star Wars came out, the first, second, and third episode. Sid Mead painted everything on the canvas, so you know, I probably would have hard time painting this in Photoshop in the first place, but he did it on canvas, and he's one of a kind. Uh, Dylan Cole. Oh, there's some typo here. It should be here. Anyways, Dylan Cole. Dylan Cole used to be a matte painter, so obviously he worked with photos, and that's probably what you're looking at right here is the majority of the work that you will be doing as a production concept artist. It's really just coming down to photos, paint, and 3D, and then there's a Steve Messing, which is another level of art uh, where you work in ZBrush and Photoshop and Cinema 4D, and you're so good that you're mixing it all together to make it look awesome. And I probably wouldn't be able to do that. I'm sure I wouldn't be able to do that, even if I want to. Um, and also, coming back to being in this 5% bracket, that means it's more the closer you get to that bracket of artists that don't look for work anymore, the closer you're getting to be one of the guys who's competing with those three names. Because Sid Mead is, I don't think he's commissioning anymore or working in the industry anymore in terms of like being a full-time illustrator. But Ryan Church does, and so Dylan Cole and Steve Messing. So, and quite a few more artists out there. So it's all about making other artists' job easier. So I just listed some tools, and it should probably blur to a white sort of like spot and become a tool. Just tools. Just tools. So what makes a great concept art? Um, the great concept art makes it that first of all it illustrates the idea, and it does it well. Um, it helps you understand how things are, how to build things, and it doesn't need to be pretty as long as it's as design is solving the problem. Unless it's a book cover, illustration, marketing art for video games. That Yeah, that better look fucking pretty. um, just to quickly talk about those terms is when you're working. Most of the guys I know start as illustrators, really, unless your education and the way you start working in the industry. You get influenced by great designers, and you get to learn from the great designers, and you get to learn their design sense, and you understand more about what the design is, and then after that you work on your rendering skills. Then yeah, you're more of a designer from the beginning. But 90% of the guys really start as an illustrators because the passion to art makes them to illustrate fun art and make awesome pictures, and that's when you learn how to render. And then this design sense comes after that. Um, Now, successful concept art will be when it doesn't mean it has to look good or it has to be beautifully rendered and photorealistic or whatnot. It means that it's solving a specific problem. Um, it means that you're basically creating an idea, but also explaining what it means. So, if, for instance, if you would be working on a mech design or a robot design, you want to work on shapes of the robot. You want to kind of paint the robot to look awesome and look uh, make it feel like it's a I don't know. You're gonna work on surfacing and make it realistic and the lighting and whatnot. But also, what you want to think is it's not going to be a great concept art, or not going to be useful concept art unless it's explaining other artists how they're going to build it. Um, if it doesn't explain how it's built and you're not even suggesting any of that, then you're in trouble because 3D artist that's going to be building it will come to your desk and start asking a lot of questions. Um, Also, there's a huge distinction between two phases of or two different kind of artwork you would be doing. This refers directly to film and video games. There's a pre-production period and a production period. And pre-production period is the whole purpose of pre-production is to make sure that the production starts. Either the film gets a green light and studio says okay, we'll making it, or in video games it's just to explore what the game could be, or explore ideas, what the next game could be about, or what the world gonna look like, or what kind of tech we can introduce, and all those questions that you need to answer before you start making the whole thing. And then it's supposed to look awesome. Like you want to inspire everyone, and you don't need to solve problems. You don't need to explain those robot joints, like how exactly they work. You just need to paint something that is inspiring and looks pretty. And you will be creating mostly illustrations, keyframes, and all that. So it should inspire, look awesome, and it also should tell you a story. So, for instance, you can suggest some story elements or keyframes from the script. So, if it's a pre-production of the film, there's usually a rough script for the film already created, or at least an outline what the film's going to be about, and then you would be creating keyframes of based off that outline, just to show what the film could look like on the screen. And the more realistic it looks, that the better, because then whoever is in the meeting that will say we're doing this needs to be inspired, and most likely it's gonna be a person that has absolutely no idea what art is. So the things that resonate to non-artists are beautifully rendered pictures. When it comes to production, it has to solve problems, and it must be useful for other people in the pipeline. Meaning, if you're working in, say, video games, and you're in creating an environment, and you're like, for instance, good example would be say The Last of Us. Um, in order for me to create environment that is not just a beautiful picture of what the environment is, would be sitting with the designers and level designers and game designers and gameplay designers, or however in every studio they are called differently. Just designers. Let's call them designers. Sitting with them and understanding what this exact area is about, like what the player is going to be doing. Because when you play game, the most important thing is how you play game, right? It is important how it looks, but first of all, it has to be fun to play. So they will work on their thing, and they will create area, or they will make a sort of the 3D representation of the area, and playable area that they feel that plays great. And it's all going to be white boxes, nothing else. You're not going to see anything there. It's just going to be white boxes, and kind of like it's going to look like Tron. Um, and then you come in, and your creative director, art director, and game director will say, okay, this is the gameplay. You're supposed to do this, this, and that. And creative director will say, yeah, in that area, this is the part of the story that is happening. So you have to be like the player, the character is like in the distress, and he has to act fast or something like that. And then your art director will say like, yeah, it's actually like nighttime or something. So you're getting all those informations, and then you have to channel them into concept art, and you have to kind of work organically with those with all those people, and make sure that whatever you come up with as a concept, it will show you what the game will look like. But it also will help all the other guys in the pipeline, and they will know what to make with it. If you just paint a beautiful picture of overgrown city, that's not going to answer any questions, because first of all, game designer will not know what to do with it. Like maybe you'll suggest something in your illustration that is cool, but it's not really related to what the game is. Then your art director will say like, but it's a different time of day, and it's not really what I want. So you have to be like within the group of people that you're like connected, and it's just back and forth all the time. So your final output will be determined on all the other departments. Whereas in pre-production, you just paint beautiful pictures. So that's a major difference. And oftentimes in production, things you're doing will look really bad. And in fact, 90% of my work that I did for The Last of Us is just scribbles. That if I released those, you would probably cry, and you would get your eyes would start bleeding. It looks really terrible. Because 90% of production work is really just, it doesn't have to look good. It doesn't have to look like anything. It has to answer questions that you're getting. And that's your job as a concept artist, to answer questions, to come up with concepts. And the easiest way is just to do it in Photoshop. I want to also talk about differences that I've noticed over working for films and games. In film, it's mostly about the design and function and less about rendering. So if you look out for a lot of concept art that comes from film, a lot of them are really badly rendered, and the reason is because they are made they are made really quick. Usually those concepts are done within a day or half a day or a couple of hours or an hour or 20 minutes, because they are answering questions that have to be answered in order to create film. Production in film is about producing everything and making sure everything is ready for builders to build the set, so that the actors know where they're gonna run. So they have to rent a hangar where they will be filming, the build sets, and they have to know how those sets are gonna be built, how large they're gonna be. If they're gonna build vehicles, they have to know what kind of vehicle they're gonna build, what it's gonna be based off, because they cannot create a car from the scratch. They're not in the automotive industry, so likely they'll use existing vehicles and then build on top of that. If it's character design, then it's working with the costume designers and creating, when you're painting a costume, then it has to be made as well, right? So you have to specify the right materials, and if it's even possible to make the shapes and how it's gonna act when there's actor running around with this. Maybe it's just gonna fall apart. Maybe it's impossible to be created. So it's more about the function than rendering, because you can create beautiful things, but they might be impossible to be done within the budget, because the budget is also an important thing in film. And also it's about materials, whether it's going to be printed. So for instance, if you're actually designing a weapon, is it going to be built on top of already existing weapon, or is it going to be printed entirely? Because that's different cost as well. Printing is, I think for now, printing is more a little more well, getting the actual weapon and then building on top of that is cheaper still than printing everything, but that might change. And then also the last thing is whether it's done in art department, so you're working in the actual production, or you're actually working through VFX, which happens is when the film is filmed. So all those production questions are answered, the building part is done, the filming part is done. Now you have to replace green screens. And that last part, when you work in the VFX, it's more connected to what your job would look like if you work in video games. Because essentially you're just creating concept art, and you're answering questions that will be asked by 3D artists, compositors, animators, and whatnot. So for instance, I'll come back to video games in a second, but for instance, when I was working on the X-Men, that would be a keyframe just to kind of like, how this scene could look like, and how this Sentinel character would feel like in the film. But the actual production was I picked and choose only the beautiful pictures, but there's tons of sketches and scribbles that happen in between that look really terrible, and I wouldn't ever want to show it. Just to solve those design problems, like how, because I was working with the art director of the show from the MPC side, and we were working directly with Richard Stammers, who was the VFX supervisor. And to create the final result of the Sentinel, we had to answer a lot of questions. How they're gonna animate it? How large they're gonna be? So when they start, because they were done, the concepts for this were done actually before they started filming or during the filming. I can't remember exactly, because they had to also answer questions like how actors will react to the size. So like the size was a big factor in terms of like how actors going to be filmed, um, but also like how it's going to animate, what kind of visual effects have to be created in order to make this happen. If they're gonna work more with fire, explosions, or beams and whatnot. So it was a lot of questions, and I only had uh, I only had a room to create only a few beautiful pictures, and there's a ton of work in between that is just, you don't want to look at it because it's only related to a very specific question, and if you look at that scribble, you will not even understand what it is. So that's coming back to what the video games are. 80% of your work gonna be the shitty work, where you're gonna be doing a quick overpaints. You're gonna get block mesh from designer, and then you're just gonna overpaint and do quick kind of notes on top of it, like dirty sketches, and you're gonna towards the end of the game where things are coming together and you're getting assets from 3D and you're getting animations, and lighting artists are creating light, uh, and all those elements coming together to create your playable level and the way it looks. There's just, they're not gonna connect right away. You'll be the guy who makes screenshots and overpaint, make those plants smaller, push them aside, make this bigger, change lighting. There should be shadow here. This is too big. This is too small. And it's just like quick sketches and quick notes on top of screenshots. That's 80% of work, and then 20% is majority of that 20%, by the way, is in pre-production, where you can paint beautiful pictures and make things look pretty and make line art and whatnot. But it happens in production where if it's a sci-fi project, you might be asked to make a line art out of a specific area, or maybe build a 3D stuff. If you're good at 3D, you can build it in 3D too, or make illustrations. For in The Last of Us, for instance, we kind of put upon ourselves to have at least one or two sort of wow illustrations for each level, and we were doing that even in production, just because it was not only answering a lot of questions about the lighting, it was also forcing um, programmers to work on the engine, and because some of the lighting ideas that we had, for instance, weren't possible in the engine that was done for Uncharted 2 or Uncharted 3. So we had to kind of like suggest what changes within the engine have to happen in like the lighting engine or animation and whatnot to make this game look as it look in the end. That's what you don't see on the internet, by the way. So I just to the mic, I'm just gonna answer. So you were asking if clients would be interested to see those overpaints, the 80% of shitty work that we're discussing here. Um, all right, so it depends on the project, right? If you're making an illustration for a book cover, or if you're making an illustration for marketing art, like so if you work in a game studio and you're an artist that is creating marketing art, so like like the covers for magazines, or those banners for E3 or whatnot, then obviously it has to look beautiful, and you'll create sketches first, and then you'll get approved sketches, and then you'll work with 3D artists to get the proper 3D assets, and then you will kind of put everything together in Photoshop, and then spend countless hours to finish it up. If you work freelance for smaller projects where it's more about key art and illustrations, then no, then I guess it's more about illustration after all. But if you get yourself into larger project, whether it's film or video game, it's gonna be 80% of your job. It as as I was saying, that 80% of work that is looking really shitty is not out there because none of the artists want to advertise themselves with something that looks absolutely terrible. That's something about showing your portfolio, right? When you're building a portfolio, you're not putting every single work you did there in your portfolio. You just pick and choose the only the best things about you, about your work, and you show it in portfolio. Even if it's just 5 artworks, it's still better to show 5 artworks, like really good ones, than 20 average ones. For simple reason, the attention span of an average human being is 20 seconds, and if he's not interested within 20 seconds of what he's showing, then he's just gonna flip the book and look for someone else. And that's something that I think someone from the VFX industry told me when I was trying to get myself into the VFX as a matte painter, which I failed. That if you do a demo reel, make sure that first 15 seconds are mind blowing, and then the rest of the demo reel is the good stuff, and then the last 10 seconds are mind blowing or something like that. Because you wanna show impressive stuff at the beginning and at the end to get the better impact. But yeah, it's gonna be 80% of shitty work, and you're like when you're getting into industry and it's your first film job or first games job, you'll be excited because like I'm gonna paint beautiful pictures, but it's only gonna be those couple of images that you'll be releasing, and then the rest of it is just like I'm gonna kill myself. I don't want to be on this anymore. Um, you know what? You're creating a product that is not your own small project. It's a huge thing. It's more than 100 people involved, and you have to be part of the team. And it doesn't matter what you're producing as long as it's answering questions. It's that. Um, so a few more examples of the work that I was doing. The keyframe painted over 3D layout made by game designers. That was for Crysis 2. The layout was done in the CryEngine, and there was little lighting. There was not too much lighting information, and there was no information about what's in the scene. It was just buildings. And what I had to come up with was how to dress this whole set so that then the 3D artist can get in and see, okay, I need to build so the vegetation artist, okay, I need to build those trees and then those vines that are on top of the building. And then 3D artist, I need to build solar panels and the bus and the broken cars. VFX artist would say, or effects artist would say, I need to create fire and some paper that is flying in the air. And then the lighting artist, like, how am I gonna light it? So that was the purpose of this painting, creating a keyframe that answers those questions. In The Last of Us, when we were working on the VGA 2011 trailer, that was before I think the game went into production, like full production. We wanted to showcase what the game is gonna look like, and the best way to do it is creating keyframes, because then we're not focused on, this is not gameplay area, so I don't have to focus on where the player can go and where he can't go. I have to focus on how the camera flows. So I was working with Neil Druckmann on how the cinematic flows, and then and Bruce Straley, who's a game designer, the game director. And we did more of those, by the way. This is only one of few that were kind of showing what the trailer is about. So we know what the trailer it will be about, and we had like a little cinematic like built, but there was no lighting, no textures, just character running the stairs, and there's an animation happening. So they worked that side, but I had to answer how they're gonna light it, what the texture is gonna be, how much dirt you're gonna see, and how many plants and how many cars, and when they run outside, how it's gonna look outside, because it's only a camera flying at this point. So creating that kind of keyframe is one of those the fun moments where you get to render things and like focus on those little needy details. But um, there was some many artworks that were like terrible because I had to answer how the wall is gonna be leaking in that corner, like how it's gonna look. I had to like go in and take a screenshot and just draw like lines of where it's gonna leak, and maybe make some arrows like it's gonna leak here, but not here. You know, that kind of stuff. And if you post that, like, what the all right, we're almost done with the lecture part. I think that it kind of covers the general idea of what it is to be an illustrator of concept artist in the field, and what it means for you in terms of how much you have to work to get there. Some pro advice. It's pretty much based off my own experience and experience of talking with other successful or other artists that got even more success than I did. So there is this 10,000 hour rule that comes from Malcolm Gladwell, which I used to agree 100%, but I've realized that there are some factors that have to be factored in, and it's beautiful to see a success stories from a Cinderella stories, but that doesn't happen that often, isn't it? And there's a few reasons. Is First of all, 10,000 hours mean it means you're productive 10,000 hours. It doesn't mean you're drawing something in Photoshop and did my sketch, I'll do the next one, right? It means that every hour you're spending, you're working towards a goal to create something that you weren't able to create before. It's like once you get good at something, also, it means that you have to uh, step outside of the box again and work outside of your comfort zone. And if you're just sticking within that area of your own comfort zone, um, it's just gonna be, you're just gonna kind of stagnate, and you're not gonna move forward from there. You have to step outside and do more. So 10,000 hours, that's roughly 5 years of work when you work 8 hours a day. That means after that amount of time, you should be able to work in the industry. If you're like honest about every hour you spend, that should be good enough for you to learn tools, all the tools, and become good enough to find jobs. Um, Here's food for thought. 10,000 hours is 5 years of 8 hours, but it's also 2.5 years of 16 hours. And the guys who work 16 hours a day for 2.5 years are more likely to get jobs than you after 5 years, because one thing that is becoming more and more apparent every year is how quickly the software changes, how quickly the hardware changes, and how quickly the whole industry changes. It's becoming just more and more fast-paced. In 2004, it was pretty much granted that you get your job in a big studio and you're set. You should be good for next 10 years or 15 years or something, because we're gonna make one game takes about 3-4 years to be done. Sure, I'll make like 3 or 4 games in that studio and then I'm gonna switch. The reality is, half of the studios already went under or went bankrupt because the model of how the games are created changes as well. Mobile gaming exploded a couple of years ago, which was any like there was no mobile gaming back in 2004, and now you have Angry Birds that is making more money than any big game studio. So that has to be put in the factor. In film, things are changing as well. I think the virtual reality, the Oculus, and all that will be a huge change for the entire industry very soon. Um, there was no ZBrush in 2004, and now it's mandatory tool for pretty much anyone who wants to create uh, um, creatures. So yeah. Um, Also, one thing that I was listening once to Joe Rogan podcast. It's probably one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to. It's mostly because there's some interest that I have about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's one of the biggest Jiu-Jitsu fans, and he's a UFC guy as well. Has some good guests too. Anyways, he mentioned about this 10,000 hour rule and how it applies to reality. And the reality is, you might be born in more troubled community. You might not have access to people that influence you to become passionate about art. You might be having limited access to resources, and that's putting an extra burden on top of you to even get there. So even if you spend those 10,000 hours, it might not be enough to even be in that field. But I feel that if you're passionate enough, then you can overcome maybe not everything, because that would be an empty promise. Sometimes you can't overcome, you know, life events that happen and derail everything you felt about life, right? If someone dies in your life or you get injured and paralyzed, how are you going to do art if you're paralyzed, right? Then who cares about 10,000 hours anymore? But if you're really passionate about it, and I feel like you can overcome some of the issues, not all of them, but some of them, and you can become an artist and work in this field. I personally come from pretty humble family and environment where there was never any money, and in order to have Photoshop, in order to have computer and a tablet, I had to work for 3 months in a hospital cleaning toilets and shit. So that was my first money I've earned, and instead of going to party and like drinking beer and spending it on useless stuff, I bought a computer and a tablet because I knew I want to continue that route, and I was pushing all the resources I could into this. I wasn't earning any money for first 2 years. I was pushing into hardware and software just to get the just to cover my bases, and was lucky enough to still be at home and have my rent paid by my mother and food prepared, so didn't have to care about that. It's becoming harder when you have to pay rent and you have to have a full-time job. So 10,000 hour rule is great, but it sometimes is not enough. Another thing that is important is unique art will get you better job opportunities, and I think that comes to pretty much every artist. If I would be art director, producer, or someone who's looking to hire someone for my own project, and I have my own idea what the project is, and let's assume CG Hub, let's assume it still exists, because that was a good channel where people were posting a lot of work. If you would go on CG Hub and look at the front page, or those thumbnails that were appearing, um, maybe once every couple of days you would see something. Oh shit, that's really cool. But everything else would just blend to one blurry image of chick dragons, fucking sci-fi suits, replicas of something that was already created. That oh yeah, well. Well, there you go. And that comes from the fact that some artists or some people want to create and focus on their uniqueness and their own style. And if you spend enough time and enough energy, you'll get yourself unique enough to find a good avenue to channel it and make money out of it. Um, or you can be a follower. You can see, oh, this guy posted this awesome suit design. I'll make exactly the same thing. And you know what? That guy, that Vitaly Bulgarov, will get the new Transformers 4 gig. But the Kid Bash pieces he released and you will copy, you'll just be working on that mobile game instead. even though maybe you're good at rendering, it's still something that's already done. So work on your unique style. And great example is a good friend of mine, David Levy. I think it's the only artist out there that has this very specific speed painting style and design. The way he designed things is very specific to him. And every time you see his work, you don't have to see his name on the work. You'll see, oh, that's David Levy. Um, and that got him to work on Tron and Ender's Game and other films. Um, Another thing is networking is equally important. So no matter how good you are with your art, if you're not networking with anyone, if no one knows you, it's very unlikely that someone will hire you, unless it's more likely that someone will hire you to work on games than in film. In film, knowing people is probably the most important thing, apart from being just a good designer. So in film, you assume that you already reached the level at which, the really high level at which you feel that, or everyone else feels that you should work for film. You have to reach that level first. But once you reach that level, you have to start to know people. Because reality is, director, I don't know any director or production designer that ever goes on forum and check for work. They have scouts that scout for references that they need. They do some reference scouting as well, and maybe once in a while, maybe once in 10, 20 films or 50 films, that production designer will see that one artwork that is exactly what he wants to do with the film. And then it's still, he's just gonna take that artwork and here's my favorite artist, just copy that. Because I know you're productive, I can always trust that you're gonna do everything on time, so just copy that. Um, and it's very unlikely he will contact that person who did the actual art and and like hire that person because he doesn't know him. Maybe that artwork took, 2 weeks, not 2 days. How can I, like, especially in film where everything is more budget oriented, and every dollar counts because the production period is much shorter than production period of video games. In film, production is usually anywhere from 3 to 9 months, I would say, sometimes longer. In video games, it can be anywhere from half a year to 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years if the project is being redesigned millions of times and have shitty people working on it. But usually, let's say games is 3 years and film is less than a year. So you can see how much more important the budget is in film. Because in games, everything can be more in flux, and even if you fuck up for a first year, you still have 2 years. So everyone's gonna crunch till midnight, but they're gonna do it anyways. In film, you can't really do that. You don't have that much flexibility. Everything has to be, on the budget. And hiring a new guy outside of the industry, it's rarely happens because I already have 3 guys that I worked with on 3 films. I know they deliver on time. They always are good with feedback, so why would I want to look for someone else? And I don't care about the quality either. I care about the quality of the design. I don't have to have beautiful renders for what I need. I'm building stuff, so I want to just make sure that people can build stuff. So networking is important. So, but don't be that guy who message on Facebook regularly, every day, or twice, or 5 times. Because I personally had few weirdos like that where you just open Facebook, hello, 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 like 4 times in a row, hello, like I don't have time, and like close it, and then you open Facebook for something else, and hello, hello, hello. It's like fucking, you open the chat and it's just like a string of hellos. Hello. uh, um, so just respect others' time, and that's what I'm saying. If you come to a workshop, it's easy because you can ask questions directly. But if you're not in the workshop and you're messaging someone, message on Facebook, but just introduce yourself, maybe where you're from, like what you do. Keep it short. Don't make a wall of text. Just hey, I wish I would like to ask you a question if you have time, and if not, then cool. That's it. Just be polite. Not everyone has time to answer questions, and not everyone wants to answer questions. Um, but if you introduce yourself and be cool and be normal and be yourself, and then it's much easier to connect. If you're like real and not fake, it's easier to connect. And if you're a nice person too, don't start with like, oh, I think your work is good, but some of it sucks. Then that person likely will not want to talk with you. um, Another thing, get your ego checked too, especially if you think it's everyone else's fault. Um, there is few artists out there that have, and that's something I talked about on the way here with Danny. There's few artists that should really check their ego, and they feel they are the most popular person out there, and they demand to have that popularity around them, and like almost feel offended if someone doesn't recognize them. And some of the artists out there probably know who I'm talking about. Don't be that person because everyone will hate you. Um, get your ego checked. Even I talk with a lot of people in the industry. Reality is that I got to know those guys because not only they saw that I'm in the same realm of how passionate about my work I am. And if you're that person that you're really passionate about your work or about art in general, you want to surround yourself with likely minded people so they can push you to work even more. Um, but I spoke with those guys, and all of them have their ego intact. They see where they suck. Like they see that part of my work sucks. I cannot do this, and I wish I could improve. And even they are pretty humble about what they do. Even the artwork like looks amazing. They are pretty humble about it too. Like I can see avenues to fix it. They're like always try to learn something new. Um, so yeah, just think about that, and you're never on top. And if you think you're good, you're not. Uh, just get your ego, just lower it down to manageable levels. You don't have to be super humble and like fakely humble, like just like, oh, like you post something amazing and like everyone likes it, like, oh, I think it sucks. That's fake too. Like you obviously made something cool, so just own it, but just don't make it as the second coming of Jesus. um, get a hobby. I can't stress it enough because even though the art itself will be your hugest passion, like biggest thing in your life, you want to have something else to channel energy through. I found, for me, I mean, everything can be hobby, by the way. Looking at flowers and collecting flowers can be a hobby. Whatever makes you happy. Um, just do it. For me, I found it's jujitsu, and I found it's actually the jujitsu itself is kind of supporting my mindset of art. Anyways, is getting my ego checked every time I go on a mat, because someone who's twice smaller than me will wipe the mat with my face, and I'll have to tap every 10 seconds. I had guys who were, it's a grappling thing, and there's just few people that I was sparring with. They were like 100 pounds, 110 pounds. I'm 200 pounds, by the way. So they're like twice smaller than me, and I got my arms in armbar and heel hooks and like choked many times, and it's just like, it comes with the technique, right? They're much more experienced and more technical about it, and that's what's beautiful about jiu-jitsu. And I feel that it supports art in those terms, is that it gets your ego checked, and you always want to learn something new. So that's like when you go on a mat, you repeat yourself and you repeat, and drill and drill and drill and drill to kind of learn the same technique over and over again. But at some point of the drilling, you'll realize, holy shit, I can actually do something else with it. And it's like learning new things on the way and trying to get out of the comfort zone, because someone who knows your game in jiu-jitsu will you know, you might win once, but if you're doing the same thing every time, he will like, you're doing the same thing. I know how to defend and beat you. So get a hobby. For me, it's jiu-jitsu, and it's awesome. It's also a good workout. Don't be a quitter. So if you commit to something and then you decide to quit, then and then like and find excuses for that, then that's not your field. Um, if you quit, then just quit and never come back, because otherwise you're just gonna waste time and money. And yeah, don't I don't have time. It's is a lame excuse, and it's used quite often, and I use it too. um, and but I at least I see that I use it and I try to improve upon. It's usually a lame excuse. Uh, you literally have no time, like literally no time, is when whatever extra you would want to do would mean that you have no time to sleep. Otherwise, you have time. So that would be it for the presentation part. I think would be good to take like 15-minute break, because we went for an hour and a half straight. And after that, I will start a demo, and maybe 40 minutes before the end of the workshop, I'll ask you, like, you can start asking a lot of questions, whatever questions you want, by the way. I'll try to answer them all. Okay, so we're back after the break. And the demo I want to do here is I'm gonna do a quick sort of keyframe. We only have about, let's say, an hour and a half before we go to QA, so I will try to kind of mash things together real quick and see where we get from there. The way I'll be working here is similar or same to the way I work for pretty much everything, starting from illustrations to for like Applebot or Wizards of the Coast, the Magic the Gathering, or book covers, to film, to video games. So it'll be similar workflow as the workflow that I was doing for The Last of Us or for Crisis. There's several ways you can start working on your project. You can start from black and white sketches, thumbnails. You can start with 3D thumbnails and whatnot. I figure it's gonna be easiest and will get us the quickest results if I show you how to start from photos and what I'm gonna do with it. And also it will be this thing about not painting from scratch, really, and being productive, being fast and productive. That's what counts. If someone is creating realistic artwork, by the way, and it's telling you that it's from scratch, and you can clearly see it's so realistic in terms of detail and everything, then it's very likely he's cheating. So what I'm gonna try to do, I'm gonna create this environment of sort of a platform in the ocean, but I want to make it like sort of radar platform. Where is it? And I gathered some references. This is a X-band radar. It's freaking huge. And I kind of gathered references that I felt will work for this workshop. Just gonna have to show you what kind of references they are. So obviously I wanted to get that structure, this radar, so I have a good reference of what it is, and maybe I'm probably gonna reuse a lot of that and maybe paint on top of that as well. Obviously ocean references in many forms, some cloud references as well, or textures. Let's call it textures because that's what it really is. Like clouds. Probably that, I'm probably not gonna use that one anyways. And I wanted to add, like, mix it with what the um, oil fields, like when they are burning, how it looks, and I kind of want to introduce some of that look into the painting. I'll see if we can get something good out of it. The beauty of doing a workshop live is that I cannot stop a video and start thinking and like, maybe I should start over. And then just pretend I just spent that amount of time on this. I might just come up with something that looks really terrible, and but whatever. Every artist that I know, by the way, makes mistakes. All of them create shitty art time to time. Even those guys who are the most professional out there, they'll paint something that doesn't look that great. They'll be mad at themselves for a while until they create something new. So right now I'm kind of browsing through those refs, and I want to see where I want to start, kind of find the starting point. This is a small ref. Let's go and create a file first. Let's make it. I like to paint my environments widescreen, and I don't want to start with white. I usually start with gray. Even if I'm sketching, it's always going to be over 4,000 pixels. And I talked about it in a few of my tutorials already, but the reason being is if by any chance I would have to make an illustration out of this later on, so it's not only sketch but also illustration later on, then I'll be in a really bad spot if I start low resolution. Because let's zoom in 100%. You can start, like, this is a lower res texture. You can start seeing those JPEG artifacts. Let's change it to say 1500 resolution, or let's make it 1500. And when you zoom into the same amount of zoom, you'll see how much detail will start to lose. And you don't want to be in that spot where you started painting something and you create interesting details, but you have to start from scratch because you overlooked the fact that the file is too small and you have to make it bigger. So it's really what it is just stitching things together in this workflow. It's nothing else. I'm like looking at the photos and trying to gauge which of them will be useful, and then just putting them together. I want to make like several of those platforms. I'll keep this, close this, and close that one actually. Let's go and look into some more I want to grab some of the foreground ocean to kind of fill that space here, and to make life easier I'll make it even more widescreen and cinematic, like what the cinema scope would be. So the cinema scope would be 2400 on 1000. If we get close to that, it's fine. Just to make our lives easier, and so that I can conclude this within an hour and a half too, instead of playing around too much. Now I'll disable all the layers and just keep that layer here. I merged it to the background because I want to do this operation called content aware filter, which is available in Photoshop CS5 and up. It's when you make a selection on your background layer and you press delete. Like normally what you would do is just delete the background, and you can have different options. You can create foreground or background color, or determine the color pattern, white, black, gray, or content aware filter. And that's what we're going to use. And what it's going to do, it will try to calculate what this could look like on those edges. So it's an easy way to extend your image. It's not going to be clean, it's going to look dirty, but it's giving us a good base to work with. Never used it before? There you go. Yeah, that's what I use it for, like just to start my background.
So is it like a clone stamp algorithm?
I think Anthony Jones was showing that there is a way to do it through here, through the I think it's a patch tool or content aware move tool. That's what it is. Another thing I'm gonna do, I'm creating a copy of the background, and I'm gonna press Control M. That's not gonna work here. I'll press Go Adjustments, Match Color. I'll choose my source, which is the untitled one. I'll save it and name it in a second. The way it works, you pick the source, which is your source file, and then you pick the source layer. We're changing color of this new layer that I created to a color of this layer that is on top of it, because I want to have get to a similar value and similar hues of both layers, so they're in the same realm. And you can see that this is the original and this is changed, and the hues are almost identical. And this is how match color works. The only issue will appear if you're matching color to a layer that has, let's assume that our layer here would have like a red spots here and there, or maybe like a little boat that is red. Then it would screw up everything here too, because it would map some of the values and some of the hues to the reds as well, and it would create weird looking effects. So you're gonna be cautious about the hues and values of that layer, and the same goes to value, by the way. If there's too much contrast, it will kind of try to transfer this contrast to the other layer. And only if you want to change hues, then one way of doing that is by making a copy like this and then putting it on a color layer. And now we kind of are keeping the same values we had before, but we're only changing hues. but I liked it. It was darker. Actually, let's do it this way. Let's put it on color. Let's duplicate and put it on normal. And let's push it back to 60%-ish. So that would still kind of keep a little bit of that contrast. And then we can decrease contrast here to make it match. So now it kind of feels better. Just gonna copy things around, make my life easier, do some smudging for smudge tool, which I have it under R key. You have to change the keyboard mapping because it's under different keys. It's R, I made sharpen as P and blur as N, and by default is for notes, which I never use. I don't think anyone is using notes ever. I forgot what I wanted to say. Alright, yeah, the smudge tool, I make sure that there's spacing and there's scattering. A little bit of scatter. If I don't scatter and if I don't space, the way it's gonna work, it's gonna be this. So if I want to move things around, it will kind of like, you see what happens here, right? Once I introduce a little bit more spacing, usually 39%, 40%, anywhere that realm is good, and then you introduce scattering, so your little dots are scattering, you can see it's becoming it's kind of making it look like paint, like if you just throw a little bit of water and kind of start mixing those two colors together. So depending on the opacity, you can create those really soft transitions of color. And also one way I like to work with the references in general and in this workflow is, even though I'm connecting photos together and it's the base of what I'm doing, I'm also using brushes and smudge and erase tools to kind of elaborate a little more and kind of change the details and make things connect a little more as well. If you just leave the photos stitched together, it will look like photos that are stitched together. But if you start like doing some changes, it will help. Let's make this on the lighten layer maybe, or just kind of experimenting what feels right. Also, one thing I do a lot is mirror flipping the image. It helps with the composition. Your eye is getting used to what you look at quite a lot, and if you look at one angle all the time, at some point you will get used to it so much that you'll stop noticing anything that is wrong with the image. match color on that little piece as well. See, my match color is not working because Camtasia has probably a shortcut for Control M, and that's where my match color is coming from. So I have to do it manually. Duplicating the selection, and I want to change the saturation here. And I made this layer on top here. I might have to move it up a little bit. Let's go here. We don't want to snap to none, because I want to freely move it around. And then I'll double click this layer to bring the blending options, because it's covering my structure here. And I'll use the underlaying layer. And there's two ways of using this slider. One is by just moving everything, and the second one is when you press Alt, you can disconnect those two dots. And the way it's gonna work is here, I would say you're eating out the layer is kind of like disappearing where the darkest values are of the background layer. And likewise here, if you move it, it will work the other way around. So it's like a inverted version. So you can create interesting effects on this, for instance, if you want to change hue and make it graphical or something. But I will move it like this, and then I will disconnect it by pressing Alt, and then I have more control over sort of how softly it's gradienting, the gradient sort of, it's freaking hard to explain. But you see what it's doing, and that's the whole point. So I can control how far these atmospherics are reaching, and I want to see this platform here, so let's keep it like this. Let's go and see what else we have here. The whole process is just gonna be me doing pretty much all this all the time. The techniques kind of repeat, but the way I'm looking at this image is I'm thinking about adding a few smaller structures and then making a bigger one. So I will kind of elaborate from what we have here to something larger. But before we do that, I want to add a little more structures here. I'll make one like this. I've put it on the darken layer, so everything that is brighter than the background will disappear. If you do darken color, it's even more accurate. And you have to eyeball it too, because it might not work perfectly for what you need every time. It might be that you will have to make some mixing to those layers too. one reason I'm going with photos also is that I don't have to come up with the hues. And something that I probably should mention at this point is if you're doing a personal work and your goal is to learn colors and values, perspective, and all those sort of fundamentals of painting, you have to do it. Otherwise, doing those changes that I'm doing here and trying to pick and choose what color gonna work and what value is gonna sit well and how the lighting is reacting. That's gonna be extremely difficult if you're not understanding how the light, for instance, actually works and how the light affects materials and how it affects colors and everything. And when I was learning to paint, I would study photography. I would study a lot of other artists' work as well to see how they are approaching things, but I would try not to copy the work. If I would to copy, then only photography. Um, I think when I was starting out back in the Siegen days, everyone was super inspired by Craig Mullins, so obviously I was one of those guys who were super inspired too, and I tried my fair share of Mullins-esque paintings, but quickly realized that this is not the way to go, and that kind of comes back to the fact that you want to learn and introduce your own style of work, because it will get you somewhere. If not, everyone will look at your work so like, oh, you're this guy who's copying Mullins, or you're this guy who's copying um, someone else, Danny, or I've seen that stuff before, right? You don't want to be that person that everyone only associates your name with other well-known artists' name. You want to kind of develop your own style and be known for something else. But fundamentals are generally very important, and without them, it's extremely hard to make the right lighting decisions and whatnot. So it took me about good 7-8 years of my life as an artist to start to understand lighting and color and everything, so that I can go ahead and be an asshole and make things faster and then claim that I painted. Which I'm not gonna do. I'm pretty open about using textures, and I encourage everyone who want to work in production to use textures, because everyone I know in the film, unless there's maybe only a few example of people that never use photos and they have their own specific style. Pretty much all of the other guys go with photos and photos only. And it's becoming more and more apparent if you are in the production and you start to see hands-on what's going on. So knowing how to paint is important, because quite often you will find yourself that for that specific thing you're painting, there is no ideal photo. And if you can't find the ideal photo, and it's the only thing you can do, just work with photos, you're in trouble, because you cannot change your image enough to make it interesting. It's just gonna look like a photo collage. That's what I'm trying to say. And that there's not gonna be any design in it.
I see a lot of that now. People that try to do photo bash but don't get the whole point.
Yeah, so there's quite a few artworks that you can look at. I'm gonna do this thing where I'm just copying or cloning, and then I'm doing my operations on top, because I don't want to lose the original file, because whatever I'm getting from match color is not perfect, so I kind of want to mix it. But yeah, there's a lot of guys out there that you look at the work and like there's two guys, the two types of art that is coming out recently. It's like one is like obviously photo collage, and it's just like it's just a mess and doesn't make any sense and whatnot. And there's a part where some people know how to paint, and they like they know only a little bit of how to paint, but they don't have understanding of color or so well understanding that they can use it to their advantage. They only use photo as a base and then only kind of like change it a little here and there, and then you get like super realistic renderings. But in fact, when you look at it, it's just they changed, maybe they added some mechanical parts or uh, some small changes generally. And if they are asked to create something from scratch and say something that you cannot find a photo for, that's when the trouble starts because they cannot do it. So you see there are like the seams of the photos, and like there's some areas that uh, don't match up together that nicely, and like if I wouldn't knew how to paint, I wouldn't be able to do quite a few transformations here. Uh, Next thing I'm thinking here also is the function, because right now this whole structure was sitting on one pillar that didn't make any sense. So I want to kind of try adding a little bit of more sort of functionality and sturdiness to this. Let's go in here and start pulling up some more textures. There's also there's another way of approaching this kind of environment. It's more lengthy. It generally takes a little more time to create, but it's when you start with the 3D as your base, and then you elaborate from there. And it's more lengthy in terms of like it takes more time because you have to build stuff first before you start composing it into your painting. So I'm kind of trying to gauge uh, where it would make more sense visually, like where it would look better visually. I feel if I put it here, the shape's becoming more interesting. Oops. Than here. I might actually use this, move this whole thing. Like this. I'll crop the image slightly, like so. But I will not use delete cropped pixels. Um, Delete cropped pixels will mean that if you're cropping your image, every pixel that is outside of your cropping area will be cut out from the canvas. If you just use it as without the delete crop pixels, and you crop. Then if you want to recrop again, you're keeping that information that is outside of your visible canvas. I maybe talk a little bit about not just technical aspects of this painting, but also some of the design choices or the general idea behind this painting. I'm thinking to create basically this platform, or like a series of platforms, kind of elaborate a little more from just the regular singular platforms that are in the reality. So I want to build a set that is much more grandier and bigger, but still kind of grounded in reality. So I'm using things that already exist and could be put together from visual effects point of view or filming point of view. If that would be a film illustration, it would be pretty easy to work with, because the filming crew, all they would have to do is to film a platform like this. Let me just quick select here. And the rest of the job would be just to add the missing parts, and it will be much easier and less costly to have something like that than building everything from scratch, especially when the location is set. So let's say in the script of the film you would have uh, a location like this where it would be on the ocean close to existing platform, but it would be 20 years in the future, so maybe the platform would be used for as a base, a military base or something, or like a war playground. So they could film a helicopter, because I'm gonna add helicopter here. They could film a helicopter that is flying through towards that platform, the existing one, and then have VFX crew to add all the other details that are missing. And not only gonna look realistic, and it's not gonna be too expensive to be made, especially if they consider the filming part to be part of the budget. Because if they don't, then filming is pretty expensive in general. Um, Also, by the way, I'm gathering usually way more references that I gonna ever need, just in case, so that I have more things to choose from. Probably gotta do something else here. I'm using a quick selection tool to make those selections. They work best if you're having value change, like more drastic value change. So like in here, it's gonna be easier to make the selection, but maybe in this area that is the value change is low, it's not gonna be easy to use that tool. And you see I had some problems with those rotors, the engine parts. So I'm gonna copy that and create darken layers just to have it there. And then keep this. And then I can paint out all those elements that I'm not happy with.
Is it so we can keep the lighter values?
Yeah, because if I just make a darken layer, you see there's all the detail that disappears. So I usually want to keep everything as much as I can. I want to keep on normal layer. Also, as much as I can, I want to paint with 100% opacity. of the brush, for sole reason of everything you paint that is not 100% opacity uh, will start to look dirty and mushy, sort of, because you're like overlaying different brush strokes, you're creating frictions, you're creating artificial contrasts of values and hues, and you really don't want to do that. So I can, like right now, I can make the whole thing darker, and it's super easy when it's a normal layer. If I only had the darken layer, then I would be making the background darker too. It's easier to kind of paste it in as a darken layer, obviously, but I have way more control over my image if I do it this way. Just gonna copy. Just eyeballing where, in which place it would look best, the placement of this second VTOL. I also probably want to make it darker, brighter, because it's it's further away, so there will be more atmospheric particle between those two, and the one that is further away will be less contrasty and just generally brighter. I'm not sure if I'm gonna use this at all. Save the image right here. And you see on the areas where there's a lot of value change, it's super easy to make a selection with the quick selection tool.
So stuff with a lot of ribbing, is that why like the oil rigs you set it on dark?
Yeah, because if I was to work with purely selections, it would be a nightmare.
Because I know some people do that channel thing.
Yeah, it works, but the problem is I don't have 4 hours to sit here and do that, where I can just make it darken layer. It's gonna get the base proximity of things sort of handled. It doesn't have to be 100% ideal either. We're making an hour-and-a-half sketch, and granted, within that amount of time, there's less things that we could do than if we had a lot of time. So in that time, I will want to just introduce as many elements as possible to that composition, and then towards the end, once we will be running out of time, I will want to kind of just work on details, really. But I want to just get the base composition, and that would be the way I would be working in when working for film.
Dude, I use like black smoke all the time.
What?
I use that black smoke all the time. Big one right there.
This one?
Yeah, that's my favorite piece I showed you. Use that for the cover too.
Awesome.
I love that smoke.
Um, this has too much directional light, by the way. If you look at the piece that we're working on right now, it's very diffused. There's diffused light that's coming in. There's slight directionality here that is suggesting where the sunlight could be. I'm not making it 100% focused on that because the directionality of light on the VTOLs is wrong. I should probably fix that, but we can do it later. Let's imagine we're in a situation where we are in the meeting with the production designer, or production designer comes over and say, hey Maciej, I know I told you we have 3 weeks before we have that very important meeting, but guess what? You have to come up with some ideas within 2 hours. I'm like, fuck this shit. um, no, you have to do it, right? You want to be professional, and you'll obviously you will not expect 20-hour an illustration that would take 20 hours and to be done within an hour, obviously. But he will expect to see at least an idea, um, so he can show in the meeting, right? I'm gonna use this kind of brush here. This is Jamie Jones brush. Jamie Jones brushes are pretty cool. I'll start collapsing some layers. I'll do it all the time. For a simple reason is that I want to keep everything fairly clean in my file, especially if I know that I might be working on it a little more. So anytime I can collapse some layers, I will do so. Um, but I want to be careful. I don't want to collapse layers that, like, for instance, this is a normal layer and this is a darken. If I collapse it down, then everything will have the same layer property, which is the one you're collapsing to. So this normal layer suddenly becomes darkened layer. We don't want that, so we're not merging those two. I just want to kind of collapse things that make sense, and like this thing belongs to that layer here. We'll keep this separate. I'll group layers too, so when you make a selection and press Ctrl G, it'll group layers, and now I have my VTOLs in one group. I can just, toggle on and off. By the way, I'm not sure if it's gonna work, so I might have to delete some things. What I like to do is, because this selection will create hard edge, and if I just keep that, you'll see I have these weird outlines there. I want to get rid of that, and I will do it by just making a selection and then moving the selection out without moving the layer. So I'm just using arrow keys, and then there's several ways of doing that, but I'm just selecting the areas that are outside of this, or the areas that don't have that white pixels here. So I'm selecting, nudging it to the side, and then duplicating and then merging. So you see if I disable this layer, I'm getting rid of those edges. Now I want to keep this layer because what I'm gonna do here is put it on darken layer, and that way just gonna get rid of that here. That way I'm adding this smoke semi-transparent material behind this, so it's not just a sharp selection, it also has that missing information that we just deleted. And masking this out through channels or selections would be a nightmare. So that's like the quickest, easiest way. I'll group that, make a mask. What I'm trying to do is suggesting that there is oil that is burning on top of the water, so maybe there is an oil spill. Duplicate this and move this layer so we can see a little bit of that station. Experimenting what works, because I like the composition here where you had that, but we want to add the smoke and we want to be smart about it. I also feel that the smoke has a little bit too much contrast, so I'll work the layers in a way. I might just make a match color instead. And then in the match color you have those properties, luminance, that's changing the luminance of on top of your color changes. Color intensity, if we take it down, then we are missing fire. If we take it up, the fire is still there. And fade, I'll keep fade to 0 and then make it just darker. And then I will add a little gradient here. On the lighten mode. And since I have everything in group, I can just select the group and scale everything without selecting individual layers. And something I was saying, I will paint on top of those layers. I want it to feel more integrated with the overall image. One option in Photoshop CS6 and CC is that you can create your any layer, and you can connect it to the group. Normally, when you press Alt and click between layers, the way it acts is your base layer will act as a selection mask, and your top layer will kind of paint on top of it. So for instance, if I create a layer that is connected here, and if I paint, it will only affect the area that is within the mask. If I move it out from this area, you see it's actually painted outside too. So that way you can create the mask. And like for instance, if you have a metal piece or a gun and you want to paint scratches, that would be a good way to do it, because you're just painting scratches on top, and you can go outside. You don't have to be precise. Anyways, I wanted to use it differently. Create lighten mode with 50% opacity. And then I wanted to move this layer afterwards and maybe made it smaller. Then move this smoke away too, so we can see this whole thing here. But what I wanted to do with this color balance is I wanted to connect it to the group, and the smoke color is kind of standing out a little bit too much. It's pretty obvious it's not matching the hue spectrum of the painting, and I want to fix that real quick. But I'll use it here instead of the full group like this, because you see it's discoloring the background too. The reason is because this layer, which is on darken, still has the background information, and it will ask as a mask too. So we want to just only use that selection here and only affect this part. And maybe that little paint that we painted here. So now it kind of sits together a little more. What else we can do? We can make selection here and then fake the size of that platform, because we're hiding quite a few things behind the smoke. But I'll make it brighter. And on the lighten mode. Well, I'm gonna paint on the lighten mode here to push it back a little bit. And then I will want to affect the directionality of smoke. And I'll just, because I don't care too much about losing some details, if I was to finish this in illustration, then I can always delete that new layer that I'm painting on. I'm just gonna paint out some of the details and make the light more directional, and make it feel like it belongs a little more to this entire composition. I'm always careful about how the light is reacting on the new objects, and I want to make sure that the light is reacting correctly. So if this building structure here has directionality of light, and if the ocean itself has some directionality, then I want to make sure that this whole thing is being affected properly. And same goes to adding a little bit of shadow here. Just slight touch of shadow will do. We don't have to go and make it very realistic. Just a little hint. There is shadow coming in. Maybe we will want to cut out some of that smoke that we have here. Why this is not affecting? Alright, I'll use paint, and I'll paint with black color on the mask. I just created a mask for the entire group. So anytime I paint, it will erase everything, or like mask out everything that is in that group. And we can make smudges to the mask layer, like smudge it, and just to make it more painterly, if you will. I also feel that once we have our smoke, it should reflect slightly. There should be some reflection information on the water. It doesn't have to be super obvious, just something that will read as a reflection. I'm coming back to textures again. So like, how much time we've spent on this so far? About an hour? Yeah, and like if you would have to prepare for a meeting and you want to have 6 or 7 paintings for tomorrow, that you just you're done. You're moving on to something else. Um, you don't have to kind of create everything super nicely rendered and detailed. You can, like, this is good enough for most of the directors, production designers to understand what's going on and what you're trying to do with this painting. But we'll keep going, make a few changes here and there. I want to see if I can grab that guy and put it in the painting. And I'll use smudge tool to create the effect that it's, those rotors are moving. Kind of paint and smudge. So it's creating an illusion of movement. This has to go darker here. I'll delete that little guy that was there. Just gonna keep two of those. One is closer, one is further away. Then I'll try to match color this layer. It created an interesting discoloration that I could follow through if I would start introducing more colors, but I feel that it's a little bit too much, and it's sticking out. It's like different hue to these overall painting. So let's change that real quick. I'm just looking. One thing that match color thing does, which is kind of like an accident, it's creating interesting interpretation of the image. Like all of a sudden, the darkness here makes it look totally different. Like the atmosphere of the image feels different. Or this, that would suggest that, like if we would continue from here, it would suggest like a deeper fog. Like if you would clean up those areas here and make the less of the sea part visible, we could create like a fog element. I think I'm just gonna take one of those hues here and create layer, make it color layer, and then just use gradient to change the color here. And we have to put it here as well because we had the one layer that was painted. So that kind of makes the color more evened out. So I wanted this radar not to be so saturated, and the way I did it was just to select this part here. Remember, this is it's normal layer here, but we have the background information in it too, so I wanted to get rid of the background information, making selection, making it own layer, and putting it up in front of this because this is coloring the image. I actually want to change the opacity of it too. And that little color match color thing made this discoloration that happened got me thinking, what if we would try to make it in the image and make the top part of the image darker and suggest that the atmosphere, the clouds are lower and there's less light coming through, and we can use it on several methods. I would go ahead and use soft light together with normal layer, and the normal layer wouldn't be 100%, neither the soft light, because the soft light will create more contrast, and the normal layer will kind of take away some of the contrast too, and both of those work together pretty well. And then we can add adjustment layer as well, kind of bring back some contrast maybe. gonna pause for a second just to talk on few aspects of what we've been doing so far. And if you want to ask questions, feel free to ask any questions here as well. Basically, when just outside of showing you how things can be done, that's one way of doing it. Another way is where you start with 3D assets and you work from the 3D assets and then paint over or photo bash on top of it and that stuff. Or you paint from scratch if you're fast, if you just want to create value sketches. A good friend of mine, John Park, is awesome at it. His sketches are really quick, and the gesture he's using and the way he's using values and colors is just perfect, and it works pretty well for creating sketches. And I'm sure he could create something like this real fast too, without using photos. But not everyone has an expertise of sketching that way. So if you know how to paint but you're not fast enough, then the easiest way is to start with photos. And matter of fact, from almost all the films I worked on, we started from photos at some point anyways, and 90% of work is done that way because this is the quickest way to approach painting, especially when it's keyframe or illustration or anything that has more to do with that, anything that you would have to introduce light, color, texture information, materials and whatnot. Then at any point of where you're going to be introducing those things, it's going to be easier to go with photos. Unless you work with John Gaeta, who I've mentioned in the beginning, and who was the VFX designer for Jupiter Ascending. It was extremely hard to he's the work that I was doing with John was so unique that it was almost impossible to find the right photos, and I kind of had to go with other avenues of using 3D and every single tool in a very specific way that you wouldn't even imagine using it in that way. If that can tell anything. The movie is coming out. I think it was moved to 2015. I was hoping to show some work of that movie this year, but it was pushed back. But when that happens, I'll release the concept art, and everyone who cares to look at it in a year of time, like in January or on February, whatever it's going to be released, you'll remember what I was talking about, and I think you will get that aha moment where it's like, okay, I know what he was talking about. Anyways, so in most cases you will use photos. In most recent projects I used photos. I've seen other artists using photos too. Unless you're designing something that doesn't exist, and the whole purpose of your time spent on that specific thing is just to design that one object or something. Say you're designing an interior of a spaceship. You might want to start it with 3D or maybe sketches. You might just sketch things, and it's not necessary to use photography then, because all you're working on is mostly shapes first, because the shapes and interiors that are not already existent will be most important in the first place, and they will determine how things look. And then once you start introducing what kind of material is used for that space, then you will start using textures. So if there is a metal grid or sort of like a metal catwalk as a ground, then you will use metal grid textures. Why would you want to spend time painting that texture if you can just, slap a photo on top of that, and it's gonna tell you everything. If you're working in 3D, then you will use metal textures and render it out. It's gonna be the same thing. In video games are a little less demanding time-wise. You have a little more time to work on artworks, especially when it's a keyframe or illustration that is supposed to be like this inspirational thing. But that's also because the video games production cycle is much longer, so there is more things to like there's more time to play around and kind of figure out things and come up with ideas. Films are more budget budget strict and more fast paced, and thus you kind of have to take measures and work the fastest you can with the quality that you've been expected to deliver. In any occasion, if that would be illustration done for film or for a video game, the way let's just put it like this. If I would do this keyframe for film in pre-production, and then I would be asked to work on that specific set, just to come up with some ideas, like how this the expansion that we painted there for the platform. I could be asked how to design this, and like let's work on that part, and then I would go in and start doing paintings, either paintings from different angles. If there would be a specific script or action going on, then you could paint more keyframes of that specific area. Maybe the hero would be dropping off from the VTOL to that radar station. Then you could paint that from the close-up where it's almost like landing there. Have some few camera angles. But if you were to design the extension, then more than likely you would either get photos of that specific set and then work on top of them. So you get a helicopter photo of that set and then you just paint over, or you build that extension in 3D. So you work some basic 3D models. You make them in 3ds Max, Maya, Modo, whichever software you're using, and then match the camera to a photo to sort of match the lighting to the photo, make like a quick sort of interpretation, and then overpaint and make like a painting out of it. Or you would just build it. Like you just literally spend a lot of time in both Photoshop and 3D software, where you would just build, render, overpaint, suggest that there's like the walkways here, there's some pipes here, do some quick texturing Photoshop. Obviously building everything in 3D, and you doing UVs and textures and all those things, and rendering all those pipes and whatnot. That's too time consuming. That's never gonna happen. You would or rarely ever happens, uh, unless you're working on one very specific part of the film and you work on it for like 6 months, then yeah. But most likely, if it's a set, then you will kind of build it roughly what it is and then paint over, because paint overs are quicker than if you would have to build every detail in 3D. Another instance would be the VTOL that we have here. If it was a sci-fi film, you might just take that away, sort of like call it out, and then work on that from make like side views or front views, top views or something, and then you do the design of a vehicle. And it will also be better in mind like what kind of vehicle that is, and if they're gonna use the actual, if they're gonna rent the actual VTOL, if they're gonna build it, if they're gonna actually build it on set and film it with the visual effects on the green screen, or maybe they'll have people flying in this thing and film it when they're flying. Most likely they will take used parts and build it on set and use green screen. That's most likely. And then they'll build on top of that vehicle, but they'll have the base. If it's a flying vehicle, if it's a moving vehicle, then they will take the actual car, because cars are way cheaper than flying things, obviously, than planes or helicopters. They'll take existing car or truck and then build on top of that, right? and then use it for filming. So you will take this away from the concept and then design it separately without background, for instance. And then something to take into consideration is the scale, how many people can get in, if it's going to be built on set, what would be the base on top of which it will be built. If you know what the base is going to be, or the decision is made, then from now on you have to, everything you build, you have to build on top of that base, and you have to be careful with the scale, careful with adding detail where it's not going to be possible to be built, or it's gonna make it impossible for actor to sit in that place or get out of that place. So if actor has to jump out through the window, when you're designing, you have to make it possible on your concept too. Um, in video games, when you would design those things, you don't have to care about those aspects that much. I mean, obviously to a degree, you have to, but it's easier to animate and make shortcuts in an animation of a character rather than having an actor doing an acrobatics because you designed something in the wrong place.